Hey, what's up? It's Anthony Marley Love. Welcome to another episode of Traveling While Black, and to the second episode of our Traveling Across America series, Volume 1.
Yes, we're out here in Denver, Colorado, in front of the state capitol, and we're excited to show you our experience in the city.
So take a look at this episode, and as always, let us know what you think.
A few years back, we started our show to help others interested in exploring the Pacific Northwest.
Inspired by the spirit of the Negro Motorist Green Book, we wanted to be a valuable resource to Black and BIPOC travelers, while also connecting them to some of the most amazing places in this part of the country.
We thought, what if we took our show to some other cities across the United States? What new things could we learn? What new stories could we hear?
So we decided to find out and picked 4 cities:
Kansas City, Missouri;
Denver, Colorado;
Cheyenne, Wyoming;
Billings, Montana, and loaded up in the car to drop in to experience each for a couple of days.
And of course, rate our experience for the drive, the amount of fun, and most importantly, how comfortable we felt visiting as a Black traveler.
I'm Anthony Love.
I'm Marley Love.
Come along with us on Traveling While Black Across America,
Volume 1.
For the second stop in our TWB Across America series, we are continuing west on Interstate 70 and dropping into the city of Denver, Colorado.
Denver is the biggest city in the state of Colorado, which is the first state we will visit on this journey that is a part of what is known as the Rocky Mountain States, a collection of states that the iconic Rocky Mountains range run through.
But Colorado is the state that most of the mountain occupies. This makes sense because the altitude is something that you could feel just driving within the car. That is why the city of Denver is known as the Mile High City.
A great fact about the city that pertains to this episode is that we did not need to pull off to see the capital of Colorado, because Denver is in fact the capital of the state. But beyond being the state capital, the city is notable for quite a few other things.
Yep, like its forever evolving craft beer scene, or its proximity to great hiking options. But for us, what stood out most on this stop, once again, was the abundance of Black history within the city. And once again, history we previously had no idea about.
Yes, I must admit, just like with Kansas City, I have had plenty of opportunity to learn the Black history of Denver before this trip. See, my family lives in the Denver area, so I've been visiting since I was a little girl.
But as they say, better late than never. And even though it's late, there's no better time to discover the rich history of the Mile High City than on this road trip for this episode.
Also for this episode, we were able to get insight on this vibrant history from some individuals who live there. And just like last episode, you also hear from those individuals.
Yes, individuals local to the Denver area, all from a variety of walks of life. From a popular content creator with the mission of inclusion.
Hello, I'm Parker McMullen Bushman, aka Queen Work. I am also the founder of Eco Inclusive and the co-founder of the Inclusive Guide.
To a historian dedicated to preserving the district's rich cultural history.
My name is Terry Gentry. I am an engagement manager for Black communities here at History Colorado. I'm also a volunteer docent and on the board of directors for the Black American West Museum and Heritage Center in Denver.
We even got to talk to a city firefighter currently working in one of the historic Black firehouses.
My name is Lieutenant Gabe Mamgonian with the Denver Fire Department.
And as you will see during our Level of Fun segment, we got to talk with some really dope individuals passionate about a really amazing mission that is rooted within the state's Black history.
I'm Maddie Shaheen, and I'm the Environmental STEM Program Manager for Lincoln Hills Care.
I am PJ Galloway, and I am the Environmental Sustainability Specialist for Lincoln Hills Care.
The experience of Denver for this episode had a lot of similarities with our trip to Kansas City for the last episode, including the unfamiliar Black history, meeting up with extraordinary local individuals, and of course our excitement to perhaps show you, the viewer, a different perspective of the Mile High City.
Throughout this series, you will see how all of the Rocky Mountain state cities were influenced by the railroad industry, and in some cases, the main reason they came to be.
No surprise that the industry had a major influence on one of the oldest districts in the city, even designating the name of the district.
To go back historically, Denver was founded at the confluence of Cherry Creek and Platte River in 1858 and grew in a northeasterly direction. Later on, someone started other parts of the city like Capitol Hill on the northeast west-south grid. And as Capitol Hill grew north and the Five Points neighborhood continued to grow northeast, you get these weird corners. Some spaces you'll count 5 corners. And in the 1890s, a trolley rolled down Welton Street and stopped at that corner. Instead of calling the names of all the streets on their marquee, they called it 5 Points, and the name stuck. Now it's called the 5 Points Historic Cultural District. It's been registered as a cultural district.
The industry was even one of the 2 main influences on the 5 Points in becoming the historic Black district in Denver.
It's always been a multi-ethnic neighborhood, and we had a lot of Black families move into that area, especially with the influx of folks coming to work on the railroads.
The other major influence on the 5 Points becoming the historic Black district in the city was the usual suspect behind historic Black neighborhoods across America, redlining.
But also, as usual to the story of historical Black neighborhoods in America, the Black residents built a thriving community that became a national cultural hotspot.
In the midst of all of that, we had quite a few Black business owners up and down Welton Street. A range of different businesses, from clothing and groceries and dry cleaners, and anything imaginable that you needed was along that street.
Yes, Black faces made up all aspects of the neighborhood, including the fire department that was located within the neighborhood.
Right behind me is historic Denver Station number 3. It's in predominantly Black neighborhood known as 5 Points in the Denver area. It is known as the Eye of the Storm. Eye of the Storm comes from this neighborhood. It's always being a safe haven and a place to go for the neighbors and the community to come together and feel safe, a part of the community, and a place that they'd be able to go to for whatever they need. It's become a huge part of this community, this neighborhood, and as well as how long this station's been here. It's one of the oldest fire stations in Denver. The original Station 3 is just across the street, but this is one of the longest running fire stations in the city of Denver, and it means a lot to the neighborhood.
While the local Black residents ran the district's infrastructure, the district also attracted outside Black visitors thanks to a same American art form that attracted people to Kansas City's 18th and Vine, jazz.
Thanks to the efforts of a local musician, a lot of popular jazz musicians and other celebrities were driven to the neighborhood, helping it become known as Harlem of the West.
George Morrison, who was a classically trained concert violinist, he wasn't allowed to play in the symphony orchestras. So he started his own band, and they traveled around the United States performing. And he knew all of these musicians like Duke Ellington, Lionel Hampton, Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, and they started having guests come in some of the nightclubs. And it got to the place where we were having so many guests come in, we were called Harlem of the West. This was just a place to come in.
Unfortunately, as the case with almost all historic Black neighborhoods across America, the good times eventually slowed down and opportunity began to dry up within the 5 Points.
Ironically, in some ways, the same factors that contributed to the neighborhood becoming what it was in its prime also contributed to its decline. Redlining, Black mobility, and a railroad. Or at least a newer version of one.
Redlining continued to limit resources and investments into the community, and the advancement in salaries allowed more and more Black residents to move to more desired places and areas outside the district.
The final straw would be the construction of the light rail, which disrupted a lot of the remaining businesses while it was being built. All of this resulted to the city council declaring the neighborhood to be blighted in 2012.
While there is still an ongoing struggle with gentrification and in some cases redlining, there are current vibrant Black businesses and motivated individuals determined on preserving this neighborhood's character and heritage.
It's important to me that we preserve this history because there's so much information about what was experienced in that neighborhood. Music and entertainment and great restaurants and small business owners, community gatherings. Just a lot of things happening. We don't want to lose that history.
The neighborhood also hosts two of the biggest annual events within the city, the Juneteenth Music Festival and the 5 Points Jazz Festival. But more on those two events during Level of Fun.
Once again on our journey, we encountered a rich, impactful story of our history that we previously were not aware of.
But lucky for us, once again on our journey, we were able to experience that history up close, as well as the people carrying it on today, both via artifacts from the past and through the living establishments paving the way into the future.
And once again, we were excited to drop in and find out if experiencing the rich Black history would be enough for us to rank the Mile High city of Denver, Colorado, high in terms of fun and most importantly, comfort.
Drive grade. Before we get into it, let us explain our new expanded drive grade rating scale.
We are expanding the rating scales for all of our categories, going from a 5-point scale to a 10-point scale. This way we can add more context to why we are rating experiences the way we are.
For a drive grade, that means we are breaking it down like this. The quality of the views along the route, the access to gas stations and restaurants along the route, the easiness of the route, or in other words, the route doesn't require a lot of highway switching, or even worse, hits a lot of traffic. Also, the quality of roadside attractions along the route. Finally, you already know, the quality of the parking options. Hopefully there are a lot of options, and even better, they're a free option.
The drive from Kansas City, Missouri to the second leg of our cross-country series Volume 1, Denver, Colorado, was to be our longest drive of the trip, and that wasn't even considering our stops at roadside attractions.
The drive will come out to be on average around 9 hours, but the route on paper would again be a simple one, since we again were planning to take Interstate 70 the whole way straight there. But of course, that wasn't to be, because the attractions would veer us off onto a whole new route.
As I mentioned before, I have taken the drive from Missouri to Denver, Colorado many times since I was a little girl, and to be honest, it wasn't among my list of favorites, so my expectations were really low.
And since we've been together for more than 2 decades, I also have had plenty of opportunities to experience the drive, and I too can say it definitely wasn't one of my favorites. The major problem for us was the large, flat, boring state of Kansas.
Yes, I hated the Kansas part of this drive. Not only was the scenery of Kansas flat and boring, but majority of the drive is through the state. We hated it until we took this trip.
See, because of this trip and our choice in deciding and really taking advantage of choosing to drive the journey, we were able to experience the drive this time in a whole different light.
Ironically, it would be this drive from Kansas City to Denver that would be one of our favorites throughout the entire road trip, mainly because of the many attractions that we discovered in, believe it or not, the state of Kansas.
About an hour down Interstate 70, we pulled off in the state capital of Topeka, Kansas. Not only did we stop by the Capitol building so we could snap a couple pictures, but also to visit the Brown v. Board of Education National Historical Park. This National Historical Park features a museum that is housed in what was formerly Monroe Elementary, which was the school at the center of the landmark decision on Brown v. Board of Education.
The museum dedicated to telling the story around the decision that would end segregation within American schools. Of course, the park, which is also a part of the National Civil Rights Trail, is open to the public and also offers tours. Check the National Parks website at nps.gov for more information.
While we did see what appeared to be a local school field trip entering the museum, we unfortunately couldn't go inside to check it out. Well, because we had to continue on our journey. Plus, there was a lot more things to see along the way.
The history was great, but for our next attraction, I wanted to have a little fun. So we headed a little over 45 minutes off the original path to the small town of Wamego, Kansas, to see the Oz Museum, only because I was and will always be a huge fan of the movie.
Not really sure what they offer, but we definitely did not go in. No shade to the Oz Museum, but I was hyped to get to another historic attraction. See, just another 40 or so minutes down the road, we pulled into Junction City to stop by the Buffalo Soldier Memorial, a statue dedicated as a tribute to the black troop of the 9th and 10th Cavalry Regiments.
The monument is located in Pawnee Park, ironically near the location of the segregated family housing assigned to the families of the black soldiers. While it wasn't as fun as the Oz stop, I still enjoyed this historic one. But the stop that I enjoyed the most was the next one. And it was even another historic stop, Nicodemus, Kansas, a National Historic Site dedicated to the oldest and only remaining black settlement west of the Mississippi River.
The story of Nicodemus was yet another amazing story of black history that we previously had never heard of prior to this trip. Nicodemus came about when former enslaved African Americans left the reconstruction of the post-Civil War South to experience the freedom promised within Kansas. They established the self-sustaining town that operated until the economic collapse that brought about the Great Depression.
The park is definitely worth a visit if you happen to be passing through. 5 of the original historic buildings still stand, and there are plaques scattered throughout the park telling the interesting history of the town. Once again, check out the National Parks website at nps.gov for more information.
Yeah, we really enjoyed the park and somewhat took our time, but not too much time because we still had 7 hours left before reaching Denver.
Yes, 7 hours seemed like a lot, especially since we had already been driving with what felt like at least that long. But having experienced the stops we experienced along the way, it made the extra long ride seem like it was worth it.
Plus, we eventually made it to the Mile High City. So did the abundance of amazing roadside attractions still equate to a high overall drive grade rating for this trip? Let's see.
Starting with views, the scenery of the state is still flat and pretty boring, so no points there. But the score bounces back with a high score in regards to roadside amenities, with the abundance of gas stations and quick stop restaurants.
I know the straight shot down Interstate 70 is what gives this drive a high score in regard to route difficulty, and of course the score couldn't be more perfect for us when considering the roadside attractions.
Unfortunately for one of us, it was a parking situation around the city of Denver that caused the score to take a hit. So after all of that, for our second drive in our Cross Country America series, just like our first drive grade, we give a 7 out of 10 for drive grade.
Not too bad. And to be honest, if I wasn't such a stickler for the parking, the drive could easily been a 10 on the roadside attractions we experienced alone. But beautiful people, I got to keep it real.
Still, the city of Denver had 2 more opportunities to score even higher in other categories, and the level of fun was one that we were actually excited to experience going in. Level of fun.
Again, since we are expanding the rating scales for all of our categories, going from a 5-point scale to a 10-point scale, let us explain our level of fun.
For our 10-point level of fun rating, we will be considering the amount and quality of activities offered within the vicinity of the location, the variety of activities that apply to the different visitor demographics. And what we mean by this is, are the activities better suited for couples, singles, or families? Are they more suited for younger or older folks? And we are also taking into account the quality of restaurant options, the affordability of the area. Finally, are there any special events happening during our visit?
So, how was our experience this trip? Like all of our visits, we wanted to experience activities within Denver that the city is known for, and of course, the local Black history recently discovered by us.
We started with the Black history and did a mini walking tour of the 5 Points Historical Cultural District, exploring the sites that included some of the original buildings popular during the district's heyday. We were even given a tour of the historic fire station number 3.
Throughout the neighborhood, you will find plaques that detail the story history of the district. We do want to come back and do a deeper dive of the neighborhood and cover the dope stores we didn't have time to mention this time around.
After the history, we were ready to loosen up, which meant it was a perfect time to experience the craft beer scene within the city, once dubbed the craft beer capital of the nation.
Similar to our Kansas City experience, we were able to find a Black-owned brewery and tap room. And also like our KC experience, we were served some delicious beer that impressed us non-beer drinkers.
Novel Strand Brewing Company is a Black and woman-owned brewery and tap room. Their tap room, located at 305 West 1st Avenue in Denver, offers great vibes and even a food truck outside. And of course, like Aunt said, a wide selection of delicious beers that were even appealing to us.
We had a great time at Novel Strand, and it appeared that everyone else did as well. And we mean everyone. Besides the history and craft beer, the final big thing we had to experience was the outdoors. Being in Colorado, a state that is possibly most noted for its unlimited access to amazing outdoor experiences, it is no surprise that Denver is in close proximity to some great hikes and camping grounds.
This is why it should be no surprise that there are some really amazing local Black creators making great content around enjoying the outdoors and encouraging more participation within the Black community. We got to meet up with one of those creators and learn more about their mission to expand inclusion into the outdoors and beyond.
I co-founded Inclusive Guide along with my partner and co-founder Crystal Egley in 2018. The Inclusive Guide is kind of like Yelp, but for inclusion. And people rate places and spaces based on how they felt they were treated in relation to their identity. And then we look for trends on the back end.
We definitely recommend exploring the Inclusive Guide. You can find out more at inclusiveguide.com.
The importance of communicating safe and inclusive friendly travel is easily understood when one considers an ugly part of the history of Denver and the state of Colorado overall.
Denver was an interesting place back then. All of the things that we were able to do, but the state of Colorado had membership that exceeded 50,000 of the Ku Klux Klan here.
That's why for Black people within the state, historically, Safe and easy access to the outdoors was nearly impossible to come by, but not impossible, thanks to a popular black resort.
In 1922, E.C. Regner and Roger Ewald created Lincoln Hills Resort, which was for the longest time the only resort for African Americans west of the Mississippi River. Middle-class black families were able to escape the grips of segregation that outside of the resort prevented them from experiencing the joys of nature.
Beyond the black middle class, the resort also served as the location of a YMCA girls' camp that served African American women and girls prohibited from participating in other camps around the country. Today, that spirit of giving back and charity continues at Lincoln Hills.
In 2007, a black philanthropist who actually grew up in the Five Points neighborhood purchased a property and founded Lincoln Hills Cares, a nonprofit organization that operates programs at the resort geared to expand access to the outdoors to African American and other BIPOC communities.
For our outdoor experience this trip, we had the extraordinary privilege to tour the Lincoln Hills property and learn more about the organization's mission from two individuals instrumental in its operation.
Hi, we're Lincoln Hills Cares. We're at the historic Lincoln Hills at the beautiful Lake Pactolus. We are an environmental nonprofit educating youth in the environment, conservation, sustainability, and providing access to the outdoors. The historic Lincoln Hills was established in the 1920s. This was a safe space for all people to be able to access the outdoors during times of segregation. Today, we educate youth about the cultural history of African Americans in the West and also in environmental education in conserving our planet and our resources.
One of the most important things that has influenced me working at Lincoln Hills is a very special quote by our benefactor, and that is, if you can learn to create a universe out of nothing, your mentality can move from one of scarcity to that of abundance. So we hope that we can transfer that to anybody that comes up here.
Lincoln Hills is a nonprofit, so a lot of what they do is dependent on donations. If you're interested in finding out how you can contribute to their mission, be sure to check out their website at lincolnhillscares.org.
The visit to Lincoln Hills cemented us feeling like we had a great time and a lot of fun overall. But how does our feeling stand up to our level of fun rating scale?
First, considering activities. Denver has an abundance of things to do, and what we did this episode does not come close to scratching the surface. Just looking at sports alone, the city is home to 5 major professional sports teams, so there's definitely a high score there.
We can say that within the abundance of options, the city can provide activities for visitors of all ages and interests, so we can give another high score here for demographic applicability. However, when it comes to affordability, the city does run on the more expensive side.
Yes, the price increase reminded us that we weren't in the Midwest anymore, but because it's still cheaper than what we're used to in Seattle, we'll only take away a point. The score does bounce back in a major way when measuring the quality of restaurants. The food throughout the city was great everywhere we went.
One of our favorite restaurant experiences in Denver was at Le French, considered to be one of the best restaurants within the city, and it's also black owned. Finally, looking at special events, no surprise with the many sports teams, the city is always hosting some type of national event. But for us, the 2 events that take place within the 5 Points neighborhood were the most intriguing.
We will definitely need to try and make it back for the Juneteenth Music Festival, Denver's longest running Juneteenth celebration that is a 2-day festival, and the 5 Points Jazz Festival, which is a free all-day event celebrating the jazz culture of the neighborhood.
And tallying up the points overall, we can see that our feeling was absolutely verified by the score, because we can give Denver a 9 out of 10 for level of fun.
Wow, nearly a perfect score, and it makes sense because there are plenty of reasons why we want to come back. But before we jump the gun in booking our return trip, we had to first break down our experience of the city in terms of the level of comfort.
Comfortability for Black people. So here we go. For perhaps one of the most important categories, this is how we are measuring our comfortability for Black people rating.
For one, we will be considering the amount of Black people we saw during our visit. Also, we will be considering the most recent Black population numbers.
Other points of consideration are how prevalent is the Black history of the area, also the visibility of signs that indicate inclusion.
Finally, we will be basing it on how comfortable or uncomfortable we feel personally walking around the city and into different establishments. But let's start with the amount of other Black people we saw during our visit. Again, like during our visit to Kansas City, we actually saw a lot.
Well, at least more than we expected. Part of the reason our expectation was low was because the population of Black or African American non-Hispanics in Denver is only 8%. So we will knock a point for the population numbers.
In regards for prevalence of Black history, we are obviously going to give a high score here due to us having experienced the 5 Points neighborhood. And we didn't even get a chance to experience that whole history.
Black travelers that visit Denver, there's so many places to visit, especially I call it the trifecta of the 5 Points neighborhood. Visit the Blair Caldwell African American Research Library. They have a museum up on the 3rd floor, and the Black American West Museum, and Stiles African American Heritage Center, which is across the street from the fire station.
We'll need to go back with Terry. But just like Kansas City, we noticed in Denver that while the Black history is very prevalent, there were not many signs of inclusion.
Considering what we are used to seeing where we live in Seattle, we may have to temper our expectations in this regard, because the signs of inclusion may not be what we are used to. For example, even though we took a point from Kansas City, the city still hosts one of the only professional sporting venues built for women's sports.
Along with those previous considerations came our personal level of comfort. And we can honestly say that during our visit to Denver, we really felt comfortable everywhere we went.
Yes, for the most part, we were met with friendly and welcoming smiles and really enjoyed our time with the locals we met.
So after tallying up those scores, we can officially give the city of Denver, Colorado an 8 out of 10 for comfortability for Black people.
Wow, not too bad at all. Coming in with some really good scores of 7 for the drive, 9 for the fun, and 8 for the comfort level, we can easily recommend Denver as a destination that's worth checking out for anyone.
Yep, we can't wait to come back. For the road trip overall, we were glad we chose Denver as one of the stops. Still, we were excited to head to the next stop on our cross-country road trip series, Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Yes, we were excited to experience the city of Cheyenne for the first time. That is, if the notorious Wyoming wind would let us.
Special thanks to the sponsors of this episode, Real Solutions RS and Sync Seattle. Check the description below or our website for information on both.
Also, special thanks to everyone who participated in the making of this episode. And of course, be sure to subscribe to our channel and follow us on all of our social media platforms to see our previous adventures.
Until next time, beautiful people, stay up, stay true, and do you.